Well, firstly, welcome to everybody tonight to this council meeting on the St Patrick's Day. So, welcome. If you could just, especially to members of the public, if you could just put your mobiles to silent whilst in the chamber, if you're already on there, please. The toilets are each side of the lift, if you need a toilet. And there's no planned fire alarms, so if the alarm does go off, there's exits behind you, exits here and through the main building, and you congregate in the car park. So that's the housekeeping done. There's been public questions, there's been 10 valid questions have been received from members of the public, and 30 minutes is allowed for questions from the members of the public, and I think you've been fully briefed on the time limits and reference to supplementaries. So if everybody is okay with that, the combined response provided from questions 1 to 5 and 6 to 7. So if you're asking a question, you will know. So the first question, question 1, is from Mr. Paul Bunyan, and Paul, the attendance? Yeah, Paul. Do you want to read your question or take it as read? Do you want to come to the podium, Paul? And then just press, right, okay.
I'm happy to take the question as read.
Okay, right, thank you very much. And if you just want to wait, is Patricia Burns in attendance? You want to take this read? Gail Bunyan. Is Gail here?
She's not in attendance. No.
Okay. Rachel Bunyan. Thank you. And question 5 is Mr. Chris Ferry. Take this read. Right. So we just wait there, Paul, for a moment. Councillor Harrison has 5 minutes to respond to the questions put by him. So, Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try as best as I can to respond to those within 5 minutes. First of all, Chair, I think we understand the concerns of the local community, and I think it's important that it gives us an opportunity to explain why we are looking at building more homes within North Tyneside, and how we have made decisions and how we have worked certainly with local people. I'm sure that all members in this chamber understand the need for more homes, and especially affordable homes in North Tyneside. The concerns that residents express to us as ward councillors is backed up by data, as in the North Tyneside Strategic Housing Market Assessment Plan. And that includes the demand for affordable homes in Camperdown. This demand for affordable homes exists throughout the borough, and as I've said, also exists as well as within Camperdown. Council remember that on taking office in 2013, the elected mayor asked for plans to be developed to deliver 3,000 new affordable homes by 2024. It is true that the development land in the borough is at a premium, so a comprehensive exercise was undertaken to identify potential development sites to meet this ambitious target. Reed Avenue was selected as a potential development site as part of this process. And I think that it's important to note at this stage, the land at Reed Avenue had previously been used for housing. Although Reed Avenue site is identified as general open space in the current unitary development plan and not identified for housing in the draft local plan, the proposal to develop the site was carefully considered against national and local planning policy relating to potential housing sites and to the protection of open space. The draft local plan is very clear that small sites not identified in the plan for housing can still be considered and will make an important contribution to the council's overall housing requirements. So, by late 2014, we were in a position where we had demand for housing and a site that had previously been used for housing and which just been selected through a comprehensive exercise. And that exercise involved local councillors within those wards looking at various sites and going through them. So we did that in late 2014. And at that point, we undertook to start to talk to local people and further their elected representatives. And it was certainly a requirement that once we spoke to councillors, there was a need actually to go out and speak with the communities. After fully briefing the ward councillors, we undertook an extensive engagement process with local residents over the plans to build the new homes at Reeve Avenue. And this included sharing the initial proposals with Camperdown Forum in June 2015. Letters were then hand-delivered to local residents in July 2015, informing of the proposed development. Another letter inviting local residents to a consultation event being held in October was also delivered. When the formal planning application was lodged, further letters were sent to residents in the immediate vicinity, as well as site notices being posted to publicise the application, and an open space advert was placed in local newspapers prior to being considered by the planning committee. And it is important to note at this time that no objections were received to the open space advert. And during the initial planning consultation, there was only one valid objection received in advance of the planning committee. Though I will say later on a petition came in with 105 names on it. The planning committee approved the development of Reeve Avenue at its meeting on the 26th of January 2016, taking all those considerations in place. This is a planning committee decision, and it's not a decision made by the Mayor or Cabinet. Whether you agree with the decision or not, the fact is that we've been open about the potential regarding Reeve Avenue since the summer of 2015. The Council understands the need for open space, but this must be balanced by the need for homes both now and in the future. To be clear, we are not removing or confiscating children's play area. Some green space...
Can you just wind up, please?
I am winding up now, Chair. Some green space will be lost on Reeve Avenue, with other areas being identified within a certain 300 metres. This compares well with the Council's green policy, which was identified at the Planning Committee. And it's also really important everyone understands that 500 square metres of open space will still remain on the site after development for use by the community, including the young people. The local planning, I'm winding up now, Chair, the local planning authority's decision was that the loss of part of this open space was acceptable when balanced against the other planning issues they had to take into consideration. In summary, this site is important to ensure we meet the housing needs of this area and will directly benefit the whole of the community.
Thank you. Now, it's your chance, Mr Bunyan. Paul, do you wish to ask a supplementary question?
I do, yes. I think we've established the community support development in our area. Indeed, there's a development currently going on not too far away, building 40 houses which the community are fully in support of. What the community are not in support of is the development on this particular area. In terms of the notice in the newspapers, I believe the only one we ever saw was in the Whitley Bay News Guardian, which of course isn't available to residents of Burradon. Our campaign, we understand the political reasons why there needs to be new houses. We've never disputed that. But in terms of this particular site, we've engaged with the members of the public who live directly there, all of whom, or many of whom, have young children, and the need that site to remain in order to supervise those young children out playing. In specific, there is a member of the public with a child with autism who lives in Hall Drive. That is the only field in which she feels suitable to be able to supervise her child and feels safe.
Is this leading to a question?
It is. Lisa Kirby, who's also here, has a child with Asperger's with no spatial awareness. Lisa can only allow that child to play outside because she can see her from a kitchen window. If this field goes, despite the small amount of space that's going to be left, which will cause other issues with the residents that are going to move in there, Lisa and the child from Hall Drive will have nowhere to play. So my supplementary question is to the elected mayor: where does she expect the child with autism, the child with Asperger's and the other young children in the area to play?
Thank you.
certainly, just to start off with, this is not a political decision, it's a decision of reality. I started off by talking about the strategic housing assessment, which actually says to us there is a need and there is a demand to actually build more houses in North Tyneside. We currently have a waiting list which is well over 4,000, and if we are to build those homes for the future for our young people, then certainly we need to go ahead. And I've never ever said it was comfortable to do this. We certainly haven't to look at pieces of land and carry out a balance against that. And just to answer some of the points regarding where do young people play within that area, I think I understand. That's why it was clearly an indication that some of that land, whether we agree the amount of it would be left within there, it was clearly that there would still be land in there for young people to play on, certainly more of the smaller areas. Looking throughout their area, there is a community school with community fields and community play facilities, and there are other sites available in there to use. But I do acknowledge about a parent and a child just outside their home. That's why it's clear that we have that. But also just to highlight, when we went initially and spoke to the councillors in September 2014, that's the ward councillors, they didn't see much of an issue with it. They said that we needed to go out and consult, that's true, which we have done, and they also thought it was reasonably a good site to look at. When we went in June and spoke to the forum, there was no initial objections at that forum then. Indeed, there was general support for it, and people may shake their heads, but there was general support for it, but there was a concern with the type of home that would be developed there, whether it was flats. And we did amend those plans to flats and to houses. So in that response to those questions, Chair.
Thank you. The next question will be Mrs. Patricia Byrne. Do you wish to ask your supplementary question? Pardon? You can come. You've got a minute to ask a question. You don't have to make a statement, but if you can just put in a question. I know you're trying your best, but try and put in a question, please. Thank you.
I understand what everybody's saying about there still being play space going to be left there. But this play space, it's going to be annoying to the residents that move into there. And they're going to, complain, which duly, they're entitled to. But also, I've just received a publication this morning from the council that states that the Care and Listening Council, they put children first and open spaces. This isn't happening as far as I can see in this situation. You're not putting our children or that open space first.
Right, thank you for that. Councillor Harrison.
Well, I will disagree with that, because if we weren't putting children first, we wouldn't be creating an element of green space within that complex. We would have probably developed more homes on there. So we have considered the needs. And we've also looked at the balanced needs of the amount of green space available within that area of the borough, and at the same time, the other facilities that's available for children in play. That's always been a concern, not only of this mayor, but of previous mayors, and certainly it's a policy of this council. So I wouldn't agree that we're doing that.
Thank you. Mrs. Gail Bunyan's not here, so we'll go on to Mrs. Rachel Bunyan. I've got a supplement, Okay, thank you. Mr. Christopher Ray. Chris Ray.
Mr. Harrison mentions there are other green areas on that estate. What I would suggest to John, if he looks back at the history of those areas, and the three in particular, there's one area in Annabelle, which is no more than 300 yards away. Not less than 7 years ago, there was a resident killed by one of North Tyneside Council's bin wagons. And the land next to Camperdown Avenue, which is another green area, there was a child killed on that street 30 years ago. And the area on the land to the rear of Moor View, which backs onto the main road between Kilmouth and Burren, there was a child seriously injured. So I would say to John, really, I think you're being disingenuous when you tell us there are safe places for children to play. Children have the right to play unsupervised to a certain age. And the other areas where John mentions are predominantly the welfare, which is sort of the north end of Burren. And it isn't safe for children to actually travel through the village across a number of roads. And what I would say to the mayors, do you now, once I've told you this information, do you genuinely, hand on heart, think that our children are safe to play in these areas?
Thank you. Councillor Harrison?
Well, I did agree with that. I think it will be safe to play in there again. I've been very clear when I've said, I've been very clear when I've said the site that would be developed in there would be for the smaller children, I think, which we would acknowledge. the larger, the bigger children, if you want, kicking the football around, there's certainly space for them to do that. And I think they're big enough and adult enough, if you want, to certainly mature enough to actually go there and play on the fields that were provided. And those fields, remember, the community school and the development of that area was developed with the community and the forum at that time. The other thing regarding children's safety and the speed of traffic moving through our estates, and that's one of the reasons why I introduced the 20 mile per hour. It's not a through road as such, it's only estate traffic that would use that. And I would suggest that maybe the respect for that would be the acknowledgement of the community that the reasons for keeping it 20 mile an hour and even less is important because children and younger children do play there. So I think I can't accept that we are putting children at risk. I think we're doing things as reasonable as practical on this one. 20 mile an hour speed limits in there, providing safe play areas for young people. And, of course, there will always be accidents, and I can't legislate, I can't foresee that. But in this case, I think we're doing reasonable enough.
Thank you. The next question is question 6. When questions 6 and 7 are combined, question 6 is Erin Gilbert in attendance. Thank you. Do you want your question taken as read? Thank you. And is Alan James in attendance? Alan? No. Mr. James is not here, so we'll take his question as read. And I believe Mayor Redfern, you'll respond to this.
Yes, I'm happy to respond to that, Chair. As Councillor Harrison has explained in depth, the Council have continued to be open and honest about the proposed sale of the land on Reed Avenue for the building of homes. Extensive consultation has taken place around this development with local residents, including a presentation to the Camperdown Forum. Numerous letters to local residents and the holding of a public consultation event has taken place. Local residents were also advised of the planning application submission and their opportunity to object to the development at that time. As I said previously, all planning applications are dealt with and by the Planning Committee in accordance with planning legislation. The application for new homes on Reed Avenue was duly considered and approved by the Planning Committee on the 26th of January this year. This decision is not a decision that's made by Cabinet or the Mayor. The Cabinet agreed to the disposal of the site to North Tyneside Trading Company for the development of affordable homes in September 2015. Following planning approval, the formal decision to dispose of the site was taken on the 3rd of February 2016 and completed on the 22nd of February. The Mayor's listening event took place on the evening of Wednesday the 24th of February, where I was almost told by one of the residents that they'd come to lynch me. That took place 2 days after the sale. These homes will be subject to a sensitive local lettings policy. So the homes, the people of the area will benefit from these homes. They will have first consideration. I'm aware that detailed conversations have taken place between the Cabinet member, officers and ward councillors, including recently as 9th of March 2016. And I have to make this very, very clear. I have not been contacted by any councillor objecting to this site. I hope this clarifies the decision-making process associated with this development. And I would just like to add, we have to make decisions on behalf of 202 residents in this borough. Of those residents, 5,000 people need a home to live in. And it's one of our duties as a council to home these people. If it was your daughter or your granddaughter or your family, surely you'd want your family to have a home. And after all, we have taken in consideration of the playing area for your children, and it still will be there. And these houses have gardens too. Many of the children in our borough are still in back lanes. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm quite happy with what I've done. In fact, at the end of the day, I won't be bullied. Don't shout at me, don't swear at me like it has been happening, because I know and I feel I'm doing the right thing for the residents of this borough. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Elected Mayor. Mrs Gilbert, do you have a supplementary question? You have to come to the rostrum, unfortunately, and press the red button still on, so you're okay.
Lady Mayor, I don't think you've quite answered the question that I asked, which was, when we came to Whitley Bay, and let me tell you, none of us said we would lynch you. It was not from our community. But let's go past that. We asked you if you could overturn this ruling. You said no, no way. We have since found out that you could have done.
Answer that question.
Is that your question?
That's a question.
At that point in time you asked me, I wasn't aware of the fact that I could do that, and I'm being honest about that. I was not aware of that whatsoever, and by that time, apparently, all this had been tied up. Now, I don't know where you got that information from, but at the end of the day, I knew nothing about it at that time, and I have to tell you, the whole process, the whole deal had been concluded by the time I got to Whitley Bay.
Thank you. Question 8 is from Liam Bones. Is Liam in attendance? Do you want your question taken as read, Liam? Or? Okay, that's fair. And I believe Councillor Pickard's answering this.
Answering on behalf of Councillor Burris, who's unavoidably delayed, but hopes to get here later on. The cost to the Council magazine to the Council in 2015-16 has been £29,750. In 2014-15, the cost to the Council was £20,013. In 2013 and 14, the cost to the Council was £24,812. In each of those 3 years, it was a lower cost to the Council than the previous 4 years.
Have you got a supplementary question? Will you just come to the rostrum, please?
In the Mayor's 2013 ABC, the Mayor promised this one. The Mayor promised that the Council magazine would be axed as it was claimed it was expensive. This clearly hasn't happened. Will the Mayor admit that she is failing to deliver on her promise and explain to the people of North Tyneside why she has broken her promise?
Thank you very much, Liam. Who's answering this?
I can answer that is that that is not the case. When they came to the Council, decided that we'd have a look at how we do the advertising within the Council. For instance, if you look at the latest offer that's gone out today, or the latest magazine that's gone out, it now includes the housing matters as well, and that's saved a further £34,500. So what we have done is reviewed the cost of advertising on the magazine to try to increase the income into the Council. We've reviewed the number of times that the magazine actually goes out, and we'll continue to inform the people of North Tyneside about events that take place in North Tyneside.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Question 9 is Dan Entwistle in attendance. Let's see, Dan. No. So we'll just take the questions read, and I believe you respond to this one as well, Councillor Pickard.
As I said, Councillor Burris is delayed. We are aware that Newcastle City Council and Northumbria Police have identified that begging within areas of the city centre has become a problem, and this has led to enforcement action being taken, including civil injunctions against 3 persistent offenders last summer. In North Tyneside, operations have also taken place to identify perpetrators of crime and antisocial behaviour. This has included specific activity in and around Tynemouth Station, which has resulted in enforcement outcomes. The police, we are liaising closely with ourselves and colleagues in Newcastle to continue to share information and intelligence, and we will continue to monitor any potential displacement effect.
Well, thank you very much for that. As the person is not attending, there's no supplementary question. So can I thank the members of the public for coming tonight and asking the questions, and that's the end of the session of the public questions. Pardon? That's what, sorry, if you don't know where number 10 has been withdrawn. So that's why I thought it might have been aware. Sorry about that. But number 10 has been withdrawn, so that's the end of public questions, and thank you very much for coming and speaking tonight. Item 2 is the apologies. And as we've been filmed as we normally are, and I've got apologies from Councillors Allen, Austin, Brooks, Glindon, Hunter, Osborne, Spillard, Grayson, Reynolds, and I believe Carol Burtis is not in attendance tonight as well. Is anybody else I haven't spoken about yet? Does anybody else want to pass the apologies on? No?
Councillor Bolt.
Pardon?
Councillor Bolt, she's not here either.
Councillor who?
Apologies. Apologies.
Bulger. Speak up. Can you hear you? Tommy?
I think Councillor Brian Burtis as well.
All right. Right. Do they come in or they don't?
They're hoping to be here at some point, yeah.
Right. Right, put your hands up here. Right, item 3, declarations of interest. If you've got any declarations of interest, please sign the paper and pass it on to the legal team. Item 4 is the minutes of the council meeting. Now we've got a few, and I hopefully silence will mean that we're in agreement. 21st of January, the ordinary meeting. 4th of February, there was 2 meetings, 2 extraordinary meetings. And on the 18th of February, there was an extraordinary meeting, which have all been previously circulated, and you can agree that one as well, please. So that's all for you, thank you. Item 5 is the Welfare Reform and Work Bill, and I believe on that one, Bruce, you're moving that, are you?
Yep. On behalf of Councillor Glindon, who couldn't be here tonight, okay? I'm pleased to present this report to Council with regard to the Welfare Reform and Work Bill. Council accepted a motion at its meeting on the 19th of November 2015 with regard to the proposed tax credit changes contained within the Welfare Reform and Work Bill. Council agreed to the request for officers to report back to the Council. Can I take this opportunity to thank the officers for a very comprehensive report that they've actually prepared so far, even though it's an interim report at this moment. Previously, an interim report was brought back to Council on the 21st of January 2016, highlighting the fact that the bill continued its journey through Parliament and noting change had been made as part of the Chancellor's autumn statement and spending review announcement. At this meeting, it was agreed by Council that a further report will be brought back to Council this evening. For information, the bill completed its journey through the parliamentary process on the 7th of March 2016 and is awaiting royal assent. As you will see from the report this evening and the attached appendix, details have been provided on a comprehensive list of proposed changes. Through the governance of the Mayor's Task Group on Welfare Reform, Council officers and members are working closely with our partners in the community and voluntary sector and others to prepare for the changes and to support our residents. To ensure members are aware of all changes around welfare reform, this report and appendix also contains information on associated changes brought about by the Chancellor's summer budget, the autumn statement and the Housing and Planning Bill. I therefore ask the Council to agree the recommendations set out at 1.2 of this report. This is to agree to note the context of this report, particularly information contained in Appendix 1, and agree to receive a further update at this meeting in September 2016.
Thank you, and I believe Councillor Harrison seconded. John Harrison? Thank you. Are there any questions on this, please? Any questions? No? Okay, thank you. Oh, Marion, was that you?
I do have a couple of questions, which I don't actually mind if the officers bring forward with the next report, but it's mainly clarification because on page 14 and on page 15 it says that the cap applies to the following combined income, and it's got that it applies to bereavement allowance, and on the next page it's got the cap just not included in the cap is bereavement payment, and so I really don't know the difference between bereavement payment and bereavement allowance, and I just would be helpful if we could perhaps know the difference for the future.
I'll ask Councillor Pickard if you can.
Can I say I noticed that as well, and the easiest way is to have it reply to you on the technical basis of it. One's an allowance and one's a payment, so it depends on which part of the, whether it's a state payment or not, so I'll get the exact definition sent to you, okay?
Yeah, that's fine. And the other question I wanted, which I think perhaps we could ask for it to be included in the further report, because I appreciate that you won't have all of this information, but on page 17 it's stating that we don't know how the earnings data would be collected and communicated to local authorities from tenants. So I basically think we should what information I think we as a council would need to know would be whether the government were going to collect that data or whether the council was expected to. And if the council was expected to, then I would be asking for some assurances as to whether we'd receive additional funding to carry out that sort of work. But as I've said, that as Councillor Pickett's already said, he's asking for another report in September. Perhaps that type of information could be included in that.
I share your concern. I mean, it's in here that we need to look at it, but it's not just about the cost. It's about the information governance within the authority. We're set up to deal with individual cases in different areas and not cross-checking against because of the law and the Data Protection Act. So none of that has been clarified yet. So yes, I will point out the officers that perhaps they need to put a separate section in about information governance. But we are aware that there is a great deal of work to be carried out yet to enable any of these issues to take place.
And there's also the point as to whether people would have to give this information because people may not wish to give that type of information.
I think that when you talk about the benefits, if it's information towards that if you don't give the information, you're not entitled to the benefit. Where the problem breaks down is where sharing that information between the tax authorities and ourselves and the government raises a number of liberty issues and information issues in particular, and I think that it's all I can do is describe it as a minefield at the moment and hope that we get further clarification on a national basis, but we will make sure there's a separate section in on about the information governance within the authority.
Anthony, next week.
Because this question's all worded as a question, would you agree with me, Councillor Pickard, that the bereavement payment is a one-off payment towards funeral costs and the bereavement allowance is a bi-weekly payment for a full year towards the upkeep of a house where there is insufficient income?
I would agree, but there's an issue about the payment of the money on the bi-weekly because if you look some further, other ones include different allowances depending on who the person in the house is that's claiming the allowance. So it's not if it's a single person, it's one-off. Yeah, if it's multiple occupation or a number of people in the house, it can have complications. So yes, I do agree.
Any more questions? Anyone wants to speak? Are we agreed to agree with option 1, which accept the recommendation of point 1, point 2 as report? Agreed? Right. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item, which is a peer policy document, and and it's well, I know, but I'm just trying to delete it. Bruce,
this is my report. This one. Thank you very much. I'm not Councillor Burdis or Councillor Glindon now. I'm Councillor Pickard. Okay. Council is asked to consider the pay policy statement for 2016/17. The report sets out the background of the pay policy statement, which is at Appendix 1 of the report. It is a legal requirement for the Council to publish a pay policy statement each year by the 1st of April, setting out its own policies in relation to the pay of its workforce, particularly its senior staff and its lowest paid employees. The Council recognises its responsibility to its employees and understands the importance of openness and transparency in setting pay and grading. It aims to have clear written policies to ensure decisions on pay are fair, consistent and equitable across the workforce. In line with what has been agreed by Council since April 2012, the attached pay policy statement pulls together what already exists within the Council and how it applies in relation to the statutory requirements of the Localism Act 2011. The key areas of change from last year's report are the medium average salary has changed from 21,530 to 21,566 per annum. This is most likely due to a minor change to the bottom of the national pay spine, with spinal column point 5 being deleted from the 1st of October 2015. The pay multiplier has reduced slightly from 6.73 to 6.72, which when rounded means the report the same ratio as 1.7. Our research so far has shown that this is the lowest ratio in the region. The senior leadership team was reviewed in July 2015 to reflect the service area restructures. The introduction of the national living wage from the 1st of April 2016 will impact on 555 employees and its implementation. The introduction of the North Tyneside living wage from the 1st of April 2016 will impact on 1,143 council and school employees. The pay policy statement includes, amongst others, statements on job evaluation, pay and grading structure, policies and terms and conditions in relation to the remuneration and payments to chief officers. These statements must be prepared for each financial year and approved by full council and published. Decisions that council has already made in terms of its pay and grading structures are included in the statement, as well as decisions on job evaluation and pay that have been introduced through the collective bargaining process. The decisions on severance pay and the approach to chief officers who may be re-employed by the council now or in the future will be governed by legislation and internal policies on redundancy, early retirement and release of pension benefits and equality of opportunity. I hope the council accepts the report.
Thank you. Councillor Sterling, you second the report? Thank you. Are there any questions? How's Hodgson?
Chairman, two questions that come up on the doorstep frequently. One relates to page 36, section 9. Do officers who are acting as returning officers receive a payment when they're supervising council elections?
No, they used to, but we stopped that the first year we came in.
Thank you. And the second...
Sorry, just not as to mislead you, they do on national elections though.
So they do?
They do on national elections. That's a separate issue. The government pays that, but we don't pay anything for local elections.
Right, thank you. And the second one is the one that comes up a lot, is how is it if the Prime Minister earns £137,000 a year, our Chief Executive earns more than that?
It's worth more. We have to pay a salary that's commensurate with the responsibility of the roles. However, it should be noted, following our restructure of the senior management team, that we're paying significantly less than we did when we had the last permanent chief executive, which you'll be aware of that you appointed. And obviously we are still, although economically priced, still at the lower bandwidth within most of the councils within the country that are metropolitan authorities.
Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Wallace, sorry. All right, I'll just do any more questions on this? And we'll go to comments and it'll be Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. I think perhaps in future reports it would be helpful to know the full costs of staff, including the national insurance and the pension contributions, because the cost of public sector pensions is something which residents often do inquire about. And also it would be helpful to know the number... And also it would be helpful to know the number of staff at each level in the table in the report. Thank you.
Any more comments on this? If anyone wants to make a comment, I prove it's the will of the Council to approve the pay policy statement for 2016-17 and notifies publication of the pay policy statement on the Council's website. And obviously people are listening to what Councillor Wallace has just said there in that comment. Okay, so you agree with that?
Great.
All right, do you want to answer the comment?
Well, I have to answer the comment because what was said there was that they put the total remuneration package in, that figure at the end there. That is not what the legislation applies. We go upon the salaries that they've got. In fact, that has led to a number of anomalies up and down the country. I think it was the taxpayers' allowance got the figures totally wrong when they tried to compare authorities. For instance, they had us down as 7. I don't know where they got that from, but presumably that was from previous administration. So we need to be careful that all authorities publish the information in the way it's required by the government, otherwise you don't get a like-for-like comparison.
Thanks for that explanation. So I'll go back to the original question, just to prove the pay policy statement. Agree? Great, thank you. We've got next item is item 7, which is the combined authority proposed devolution, and I've got the elected Mayor Norma Redfern to move this.
Thank you, Chair. On October the 23rd, 2015, the leaders of the North East local authorities and myself as the representative of North Tyneside Council signed the proposed devolution agreement with the Chancellor of the Exchequer on behalf of the North East Combined Authority, known as NECA. The agreement proposes the transfer of significant powers for employment and skills, transport, housing, planning, business support and investment and associated funding from central government to NECA, and for NECA to become a mayoral combined authority, with the election of a mayor proposed to take place in May 2017. There has been extensive public consultation on the devolution proposals across the Necker area, undertaken by both Necker and the individual local authorities. In addition, although decisions relating to the implementation of a devolution agreement are the responsibility of Cabinet as part of the consultation exercise, and given the importance of the devolution agenda, on the 2nd of March 2016, Cabinet decided to seek the views of full Council in relation to the proposals. The report before Council tonight therefore provides information on the key elements of the devolution agreement, including the financial implications for the Necker area. The responsibilities proposed to be devolved to Necker by central government. The process involved in establishing a mayoral combined authority. The proposed governance arrangements if Necker were to become a mayoral combined authority, and information on the outcome of the consultation exercise undertaken. To enable the proposal to create a mayoral combined authority and devolution of powers and responsibilities and associated funding to Necker to proceed, each of the local authorities belonging to Necker, as well as the Necker Leadership Board, must consider these proposals. Cabinet will meet again on the 23rd of March to consider the devolution agreement further and determine whether to agree to the creation of the new mayoral combined authority. Should Cabinet agree and provide this proposal is supported by other authorities, including the Necker Leadership Board, this will set in train the introduction of new legislation, which will in due course bring the devolution agreement into effect. Council is invited to consider the information provided in the report and is also invited to support the proposed devolution of responsibilities, powers and funding as set out in the devolution agreement and the recommendations set out in paragraph 1.2 of the report. Thank you.
I believe Councillor Pickard Bruce's second. Thank you. Councillor Lott.
Thank you, Chair. I have an amendment that I'd like to recommend to Council, please. It has been circulated.
Have you got a second now, Councillor?
Councillor Mulvenner.
Second it and reserve the right to speak.
Okay, thank you.
What I'm proposing, Chair, is that we...
Just with that, has all members seen sight of the amendment, have they? Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Frank.
What I'm proposing, Chair, is that we delete from to enable through to authority and replace that with, and this is quotation marks, but note that further clarification and commitment is required from government in relation to the 5-year gateway reviews on the 30 million revenue grant, transport levies, local growth fund, housing funding, and local major transport schemes, and not least the APD, the airport passenger duty. So that the recommendation would be, if the amendment is accepted, would be, it is recommended that Council note the contents of the proposed devolution agreement at Appendix 1, including the proposal that the North East Combined Authority becomes a mayoral combined authority, and 2, support the proposed devolution agreement, including the creation of a mayoral combined authority for the North East Combined Authority area, but note that further clarification and commitment is required from government in relation to, and then there's the 4 points, which I won't repeat, just in case I exceed my 5 minutes. I think it's fair to say that we, on this side, regret the direct imposition of the elected mayor, but we recognise obstinacy when we see it, and we're prepared to work around it. And on that, can I commend the work of our mayor, the other council leaders, and the officer team, especially our own chief executive, who have negotiated what I think can be described as considerable and beneficial changes to produce the document that we are now considering, particularly as compared with the initial proposals that we were confronted with.
Yeah, that's fine. There's no major difference there, really. It's just words. So that's fine. So I'll give you permission to move the amendment. If you've got 5 minutes.
That's a luxury that I'm not accustomed to, Chair. Thank you. I think if I can best sum up my views on this, the whole concept of this devolution proposal. I was listening to the radio at the beginning of this week, and there was a Tory minister trying to convince us of the benefits of the proposed rail link from Manchester to Leeds. And I'm quoting him here, from Manchester to Leeds, and then on to Hull. And that opens the way up to Newcastle. And I thought, this person didn't do awfully well at geography. But that also convinced me that that is the reason why we need to have a combined authority with, if it has to be, then it has to be an elected mayor, but someone who can vocalise the true needs and aspirations of this region to these people down in London. And I remember also learning that all but 3 of the Northern Powerhouse team, all but 3 are now officed in London. And I think that says a great deal about what the Conservative government actually considers about this particular area. But if we can achieve what has been proposed now as the detail and the programme for the devolution, then I think that we can see the North East continue to grow. After all, this is the one region in the country with a positive GDP. We'll see better transport links, we'll see better planning, and we'll start to deliver for our residents as we have been prevented from delivering in the past. Thank you, Chair. I move.
Thank you. We haven't took you a lot of time, so you can sing a song if you want for a couple of minutes. But,
and for my next song.
So if anybody on the amendment, which is moved by Councillor Frankloch and seconded by Councillor Mavena, is there anybody like any questions on that? Would anyone like to make a speech on that? Any remarks on that? Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Chairman. The devolution deal which is on offer now is a completely new opportunity offered to the North East, taking powers from Whitehall and giving them to our area. There'll be additional money and additional powers to improve the place. The emphasis has to be on jobs and skills, and encouraging our children and young people to have the right qualifications, the qualifications which business needs, and encouraging those businesses. The opportunity to have an integrated transport system is also vitally important. I do hope that the leaders and Mayor will take full advantage of these opportunities. Businesses produce the jobs and the wealth to create further growth, and we hope that the leaders and Mayor will support that, although it is worrying that some members opposite express their dislike of enterprise and profit. Business and commerce are not dirty words, they're the lifeblood of a successful economy. We know from our meetings with the Minister James Wharton what hopes he has for the North East. This government is demonstrating a genuine interest in the North East. We've had frequent complaints of a North-South divide in the past, and this devolution deal is a real opportunity to remedy that. All too often the rest of the country are inundated with whinging and whining from the area. The devolution is a genuine opportunity to continue to raise prosperity here. The North East was the powerhouse of the Industrial Revolution and influenced the world, and it could be so again. We heard in yesterday's budget that further powers can be granted to some devolved areas, covering, for example, criminal justice and rehabilitation work, which I believe has been offered to the Manchester area. These opportunities will come here too if the leaders and Mayor can work successfully and seize the opportunities offered. We sincerely hope that the leaders and Mayor will rise to the challenge and use the powers offered for the benefit of everybody here. Thank you, Chairman.
Yep. Anybody else wants to speak on this motion? Marion, sorry. Because you're wearing black, you're against like camouflage.
I'll wear something different next time. I take it this is on the amendment, is that right? It's on the amendment. I think I'm minded to support this amendment. I've got a certain amount of reservations still on this on the combined authority mayoral agreement, if you look at the report and you read through the summary, it all sounds very good. But if you actually look at the actual agreement, what you find over and over again is that the combined authority has to go back to the government for the government to consider, and this term is used over and over again when it comes to the funding, etc. For example, it says on page 57, as an initial allocation to the investment fund, an allocation of 30 million a year for 30 years in revenue funding for capital financing and other costs will be made. Then it goes on to say that at the end of that, in addition, the Mayor will be given the power to place a supplement on business rates. And it goes on to say after that you might get an additional 30 million a year, but each time you've got to put it towards the government for their consideration. I'm a firm believer in devolution, but I'm not too happy when you've got to keep going back to the government and they aren't actually giving you a commitment on what they're going to do and not do. So, therefore, I'm minded to support this amendment, which is actually dealing with that item, I think. When it says that notes that further clarification and commitment is required from the government in relation to the 5-year gateway and reviews on the 30 billion revenue grant. So, if that is saying that you want more information from the government and more actual commitment and not just consideration, then I would support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we go to the vote, we have the right to reply from the mover, which is the elected mayor.
I just want to answer, Councillor, that's exactly why the amendment says that, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. So we can go now to the vote on the amendment to the motion by Councillor Lott and Councillor McDonough. All those in favour? Unanimous. None against. So that now comes to the substantive motion. I presume we don't want to go through what we've just been through because we've said everything we've said. So we have to go back to the right to reply again, which I don't think the elected mayor will want to do.
I just want to make a point. Are you trying to hurry me?
Well.
Have you got a football now?
Oh, no.
I just want to make it very clear that we haven't been whinging and whining. And if it has sounded like that, it's because we feel we're badly done to here in the north, to be quite honest. And this has happened time and time again. But when it comes to the devolution, oh no, and I'll continue to whinge and whine if that's what it is to get the best for the North East, okay? When it comes to devolution, I think here we are in our North East one, surrounded by areas that have already gone to devolution. And as you heard yesterday, there's another string of areas signed up to devolution: West Midlands, East Anglia, Greater Lincolnshire. And I just want to say to you that, as far as I'm concerned, I think the North East has great people here, tremendous people, tremendous young people. And we have got a vision for the North East. And I think if we can get ahead and get this sorted out for what we want, I think you'll see the North East grow and grow and grow, because we have much to build on. We just need to be able to make the decisions for this area ourselves, not to be told by London what we can do or what we can have or what's not possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. That's very well said, and also from let's hope the North East does become a real powerhouse again. And we'll have to vote now on the substantive motion, so hopefully it should be the same. All in favour? Yeah. Against again. Thank you very much for that. I'm not trying to hurry or anything, but I have to apologise. I think it was me last night or something, wouldn't it? But no, I mean. Sorry. Item 8 is the motions. And I believe the first motion we have is the Housing and Planning Bill motion, which is being moved by Councillor Andy Newman. Is that correct, sir?
That's right, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to bring this motion to the Council on behalf of the group. The Housing and Planning Bill currently before Parliament contains a wide range of measures. These include the expansion of home ownership, reforms to the housing management and changes to the planning process. While some items such as the help for first-time buyers are welcome, there is a fundamental problem with the bill in regards to social housing. This is centred on the bill's main focus of boosting home ownership at the expense of social housing. This will result in fewer social housing, the worsening of the housing crisis, and it will be difficult for those on low and average incomes to find affordable homes for rent or buy, and will result in social cleansing of people out of high-value property areas and result in a lifetime of insecurity. The extension of right to buy has been highly publicised by this government, but what has been less publicised is that the funding behind it is circulated around forcing the councils to sell off what is considered high-value property, which will be set at a regional, not national level. The funds raised will then be used to pay for a one-for-one replacement. Please note, not a like-for-like replacement. It will also pay for compensating the housing associations on the extension of right to buy. It will also be used to help service housing debt, and it has also recently been announced it will also go towards a brownfield decontamination fund held in Westminster. All of these combined has led to many experts concluding that the extension to right to buy will be at least £1.2 billion underfunded. This will leave the government with a huge debt that will be forced to find either by funding directly from the Treasury, lowering the value of what is considered high value, thus selling more property, or increasing housing debt. However, some of the evidence has implied that the last two options would be pursued by this government. Now, at best, this could be described as a law of unintended consequences, at worst, a deliberate attack on the most vulnerable in our society. This is because the policy will result in driving residents on low income into defined low area, because any replacement home built would be subject to the same legislation that would force it to be sold. Looking beyond the forcible sale of council home, the bill also has a commitment on forcing hard-working families into the private sector by the pay-to-stay scheme. The pay-to-stay scheme will result in hard-working families being forced to leave their council homes, and they will find themselves unable to find alternative accommodation while providing the same level of standard of living. This is because the pay-to-rate scheme is now set at £40,000 within London and £30,000 outside of London. What this means in reality is that a couple earning minimal wage will find themselves subject to the increased rental charges. The fund raised will not go to the council to help with the effects of the recent budget cuts that we've had to deal with, but in fact it will go straight to the Treasury, meaning that this is simply nothing more than a stealth tax. However, morally, I find it simply wrong to sanction somebody for trying to provide a better standard of living for their family. But what this will mean is that it will remove the incentive for a family to improve and get better jobs. The other issue I've got is with the changes to lifetime tenancies. So at this moment in time, tenancies will then be removed, given a 2 to 5 year tenancy agreement. This is deeply unfair, as people will have no home security, just on the virtue of not having any wealth. People deserve to live in a secure home without worrying about how they will provide for the next roof over their heads. This policy is about making it as difficult as possible for people to become comfortable in social housing, and will do nothing to tackle the root cause of the housing problem, the lack of housing. We therefore call upon the Mayor to write to the Secretary of State, raising this Council's concern about the bill, and that residents are made aware of the consequences that many residents will have no prospect of a secure and affordable home. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Cav?
Thanks, Chair. Terry Arthur, the Chief Executive of the Chartered Institute of Housing, is quoted as saying, "Some of the proposed measures in this bill make it incredibly difficult for councils to build homes, and vital council housing could be lost." According to their analysis, almost 7,000 council homes a year will be lost when the right to buy is extended to housing associations if no extra funding is provided. As already mentioned, the pay-to-stay could discourage social housing tenants from increasing their earnings or finding work, as well as pushing people into housing benefit entitlement. Many people aspire to buy a home, and I'm not saying the government shouldn't support this, but what about people who simply can't afford to buy? The young, the student who have student debt, those on zero-hour contracts, those forced into part-time work, short-time contracts, the disabled, those who are poorly paid or with crippling debts, the elderly, and the elderly particularly because they mostly live in bungalows, and the Joseph Rowntree Foundation are saying that 25% of council houses that will be sold are likely to be bungalows, which will disproportionately affect the elderly and disabled. This Act will, if it's passed, will herald the death knell for social housing. We need affordable housing for the young, the vulnerable and the poorest in our society. This government's obsession with home ownership means that we will end up giving almost 112,000 to people who are not in greatest housing need. That's a few hundred homeowners who could walk away after 5 years if they buy one of the government's starter homes in London. This is at the expense of the wider population and housing need. This will make it worse for hundreds of thousands of people on low incomes. It shows once again the disconnect this government has from the rest of us. It does not seem to understand communities only work when those who are working in them can afford to live in them as well.
Thank you. Questions? Any questions? Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. The motion refers to starter homes for sale being priced too high. What is too high, please?
Thank you. I'll actually, I've looked into this myself. Now, you look at the bill's focus and it says that people earning £30,000 or more will be subject to market rent. So obviously the people being targeted are earning around £30,000. Now, a starter home in this area obviously is a new build. So if we take the average 3-bedroom build in this area, we're talking £175,000. Now, a couple earning £30,000 would find it very difficult to afford a mortgage for a £175,000 property, even with the Help to Buy. That's why I say that it's going to affect people's ability to be able to find affordable housing.
Matthew?
In the last 2 years, over 500 new affordable homes have been built in North Tyneside. Do you think the proposals in the Housing and Plan Bill undermine our affordable homes programme?
I think you've made a good point there. It will undermine this policy, and the reason being because any social house that is built under the current housing policy would then be subject to being sold as soon as they become vacant. Therefore, we would have to make some very difficult choices about the quality of housing that we would build, because the virtue that as soon as it's built, it will be then liable to be sold. So why would we build a 3-bedroom property just for it to be sold straight away? It makes no sense. Therefore, this bill will will undermine our ability to provide affordable homes.
Thank you. Any more questions? I was on Mason. I thought you might ask a question.
Chair, I'd written down comments rather than questions, but I'm going to try and turn these into questions because I think it's only fair for the mover to be able to answer what comments I would make, if you don't mind. So it may be a little bit confusing, but bear with me. All right? Right, fine, thank you. I'll go through the motion, and the first point, I said that the Housing Plan Bill applies to England. Is that because Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland have devolved powers?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. The second point, the measures in the bill, particularly extension right to buy houses, etc. I mean, people are reading this. The question I'm going to ask, about boosting home ownership. I don't disagree with home ownership. A lot of people in this chamber, in particular, even yourselves, live in private houses. So in that case, does your party disagree with home ownership?
Absolutely not. I believe everybody should have the aspiration to own their own home. I just don't think it should come at the expense of others.
Thank you. The third point on pay to stay. Social rents would increase for those who earn over a certain amount. Those people could afford to buy, which would be freeing up property for those who can't. Would you agree?
I think what this refers to is, if you look at a family earning £30,000, their ability to be able to afford to buy their own home, you've got to understand you've got to have to look at the deposit. You're going to have to look at, can you afford it? But this is the other thing about the bill. The bill says that anybody, a household earning £30,000 or more will be subject to market rent. Does that take into consideration children? Does Does it take into consideration benefits that's already been paid out? It doesn't take into consideration those types of stuff. So you're saying that they could afford to buy their own homes. Well, as I've already said, a new starter home is priced at £174,000. Even with the Help to Buy, it is a stretch for a family earning with 3 children to be able to afford those type of properties.
Okay. Starter homes for sale are priced too high. I think it's always been difficult for anybody getting a housing ladder. Very, very difficult. People have to save, I take 2 jobs, to achieve a deposit and aspire. Would you agree that people would have to save, work harder, save harder for a deposit to be able to aspire?
Again, yes. I mean, anybody who's own a home will know that you have to have a fair amount of being able to save to be able to afford a home. But let's look at this policy. £30,000 equates to 2 people earning minimal wage. I find it very hard to class 2 people earning minimal wage as high earners, and therefore they having the ability to buy their own home. It's not going to work on that. The problem with the pay to save scheme is the tariff is set so low, it is going to negatively affect a lot of people.
Thank you. People who are not able to buy their own home have no security in renting and may face a lifetime of insecure renting. And also that the question before that, changes in lifetime tenancies remove security of tenure from council tenants. I can't disagree with that. But would you agree with me that home ownership is also fraught with risks?
Well, of course home ownership has risks, but also has benefits to it. But this isn't about home ownership, this is about being able to provide housing for the most vulnerable in our society. You know, it's okay to turn around and look at the housing and being able to say we are going to buy, or we're going to make sure people are able to buy. But how can we justify that when we're going to have to make life difficult for such a large portion of our society just to provide homes? You've got to understand that these people need homes. They might not be able to afford their own home. And if we're going to sit there and say, you're not going to have a secure tenancy, you're going to be forced to pay more money as soon as you start earning. And let's say it this way, why do we feel that it's acceptable to give tax breaks to oil companies but yet charge this person a little bit more money charge somebody a little bit more rent because he's finally earning a bit more money? Why is that justifiable? It's not.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to go through the whole motion, Chair, if you don't mind. Thank you. Thank you. I was in the housing building game for 40 years, and basically things go up and down, backwards and forwards. You're on about losing jobs in the housing services sector, and for what I've seen over 40 years, basically people follow the jobs. If the private sector is doing well, if the council sector is doing well, housing associations are doing well, they will follow.
I understand what you're saying on that, but what you're trying to say is we're all in a symbiotic relationship. The private sector, the council sector, they're all in a symbiotic relationship. But if this is going to have such a bad impact on the social housing, it's going to have a negative effect for everybody. Because what we're going to be doing is we're going to end up in a situation where, I mean, shelter has actually been the kinder out of some of the critics, saying it's only going to be £1.2 billion, but Savills says it's going to be underfunded by £2.4 billion. You know, I mean, £2.4 billion is not sustainable, especially when we're being cut left, right and centre. How can we justify £2.4 billion deficit on a policy which is about giving homes to some people at the expense of others?
More people face rent arrears, evictions, poverty and homelessness. Now, North Tyneside's got a really good record on this. Can you assure me that what work that we do carry out will continue? I'm sorry, should I be for the Cabinet Member?
I think that's going to be an issue for a Cabinet
I do beg your
member.
pardon. He's doing very well. I've got one left. There will be more social cleansing of people out of high-value property areas. Would you agree with me that the Labour lovies in Hampstead and Islington will be horrified?
Well, unfortunately, I live in North Tyneside, so I wouldn't want to comment about them. But let's look at this. I mean, come on, it's easy to talk about this in financial terms and stuff like that. But I mean, I'm opposed to the moral aspect of this. You know, I mean, we're going to tell people, I mean, let's look at the reality of this bill. We're going to have a group of people in social housing, and the council has improved the area, improved the schools, improved the roads, so these housing suddenly go up in value. And the first thing we say to people is, you're too poor to live here. I mean, I don't think that's fair. I think that's absolutely disgraceful, and it will do nothing to address the root cause of the housing problem. We don't have enough housing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I am, thank you.
A very good debate, that. Very good. And you've done well, Andrew. You're a bit of a star in the making, I think. People speak on the motion. So if anyone wants to, any comments or speeches, now is your chance. No, thank you. Oh, we're there. Sorry, Joe. You were a bit late there, weren't you? Oh, yeah, Helen.
Thank you, Chairman. The aim of this bill is to give more people the security and stability of owning their own home. Survey after survey shows that that's what people would rather do than rent. And the government hopes to build double the number of first-time buyer houses compared with the last 5 years, over 1 million more, and that's laudable. The government altogether is acting to increase all types of tenure, and that's right and proper. The Conservatives have a good record on this. There are plans for 200,000 new starter homes for first-time buyers to be sold at a discount. And remember, under the Labour government, the number of first-time buyers actually halved. In 1997, there were nearly 500,000 of them. By 2009, there were only 199,000. And house building in general fell under Labour. By 2009, it was down to a level not seen since the 1920s. There's also the Help to Buy ISAs, and yesterday the introduction of the new lifetime ISAs to help people save for deposits. The selling of vacant unused public land is coming forward as well, and we learned yesterday that the Housing and Community Agency will be working with Network Rail to unlock land near railway stations. It's estimated there's enough land there for another 160,000 homes. The number of affordable homes to rent increased by more than 270,000 under the coalition government, the first government since the 1980s to end the term with the highest stock of affordable homes. In the last Parliament, the coalition built twice as many council houses as was done in 13 years of Labour government, and the waiting list for social housing doubled under Labour. So I think we have a good record. The Conservative government has a good record, as has the coalition government. But the Housing and Planning Bill is a further step in that. Thank you.
Thank you. It wouldn't be Councillor Mavena around the corner there?
Well, I'm sorry I've got to disagree with Councillor Wallace on this one, because the Housing and Planning Bill is, in one sense, designed to choke housing. At the present moment in time, there are 1 million houses with planning permission. 1 million houses. Now, if you take our agenda in this council, 25% of them would be for social or affordable housing, which has potential, even if the potential is beyond the vast majority of people. But if we look at that and we look at the bill talks a lot, but doesn't actually say how we're going to deliver. We've got the example of 1 million houses there already with planning permission. It would have been far better off actually getting on and looking at a bill which will force builders to actually build what they apply for. There's no use applying for things, and we only have to look around this borough. We've got 800 houses down at Smith's Dock which have got planning permission. How many of them have been built? And that planning permission has been sitting there now for 2-3 years. No. And you look at other sites in the borough with planning permission, and again, very few of them are being built out. We build probably 100 houses a year in North Tyneside, and it's supply and demand. You look at the houses that are built, and they're mostly high-value houses, big houses, not houses that you can get your foot on the ladder to start off with. So, I mean, you know, come on, let's look at this bill and look at it from the positive side of it. It does have some positives, because one of the positives that I see in it is, for once in my life, we actually know what the government classes as an affordable house. Even though when we look at the figure, we fall about laughing at it, they've still come up with a stab at it. But to have 1 million houses with planning permission sitting there and talk about building more houses, is a load of hot air. We need to actually start delivering the houses, not talking about delivering the houses, and bring forward a bill that does deliver houses, not talk about it.
Thank you. Councillor Franklin.
Thank you, Chair. If, as Councillor Wallace stated, it really is the Conservatives who are building 200,000 houses, if she has a direct line to George Osborne, could she advise him? Because I saw him in one of his many, many high-vis jacket photo opportunities building a wall, and he's using too much cement.
Thank you. No?
I just want to make a comment. I really thought you did extremely well, Councillor Newman. But I felt the whole point of what you're saying is about but for the grace of God, go I. It was about those people who aren't fortunate enough to have the jobs or the position to have their house, to buy their houses. And as long as society has been around, there has always been that group of people that will never be able to get to where we would all love to be. So we, as human beings, have to understand that they need our help to move forward and support all the time. So the whole point wasn't about whether the Tories or George Osborne or whoever built the house. The whole point was that how we as a council help those people who cannot get on the housing ladder and give them a roof over their head which is secure.
Thank you. Andy, you have the right to reply. Oh, sorry, John, I didn't see you put your hand up there. Please, not what you're talking about. Go on, right reply, go on.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say, like on home ownership, Savills and Shelter have already commented on the flaws behind the funding of the extension of right to buy. But as I said, there's a moral aspect here. How can we tell people that they're so poor they can't live in an area just because we've improved it? This is going to result in people being forced into one area. I think that is morally wrong. And as for the pay to say scheme, you know, it's not just about people on minimum wage. You look at policemen, nurses, junior doctors, service personnel. All of these people will see their disposable income lowered because of this plan. At the same time, we're giving tax breaks out. And as for the secure tenancy, people deserve the right to have a secure tenancy to be able to live in security. I think what we need to remember is we're not talking about bricks and mortar. We're talking about people's lives. We're talking about a home and a quality of life. Ultimately, the people of my generation and my children's generation deserve the same right to and access to housing that the generations before us had. That's what is happening here. The underlying problem here is that there is a severe lack of housing. All of these policies aren't going to address that one fundamental problem. Now, when 1.8 million families suffer on council waiting lists, can we really justify a multi-million-pound sell-off of council housing? I don't think we can. But more importantly, how can we consider such a poorly funded and morally questionable policy? How can we justify giving tax breaks to Google and oil companies, yet sanction a hard-working family for trying to provide more? How can we remove the security of lifetime tenancies, condemning millions to insecurity? I find this morally wrong. Now, I understand that it may be difficult for people in this chamber, or certain people in this chamber, to actually believe me or follow what I'm saying. So instead I say, don't listen to me. Listen to the Conservative MP Mark Field, who described the funding behind the extension of right to buy as a rabbit pulled out of a hat. Listen to the experts like Shelter and Savills, who have all said that this policy is just dangerous and it's wrong. And listen, and trust me here, I cannot believe I'm actually uttering the words in this chamber, but listen to the words of Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson said that the bill, he had absolutely major problems with the bill, and he actually said that the funding for the right to buy shouldn't be funded by forcing councils to sell off the council housing, it should be funded by an equity loan scheme similar to the the Help to Buy scheme. Now, I raised Mr Johnson and all the others to make one point, and the point is that this bill has serious fundamental flaws in it, recognised by many people and many independent organisations and even members of Parliament from the Conservative Party. Now, what I want to say is I've always believed that we have a duty of care to our people, and that means all people, not just people who can afford their homes, but people who can't afford their homes. We have a duty of care to look after them. That's why I hope all members of this council, regardless of political orientation, will join myself and this group in trying to protect all of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Very well said. Very good. Very clear speaker. We'll go to the vote now. Those in favour of the motion, please show. I'll just wait for the count. You got it? Those against? (42 for, 6 against). Okay. Huh? Oh. Motion 2 is the. I'm just going to ask Councillor Graham, because I believe you're moving this motion. Is that correct?
I am indeed, and I have a slight alteration given yesterday's budget, Chair.
Right. Has it been?
It has been circulated around the table.
Right. You could just go, Sandra. Yeah. If you just explain what it is.
I've just explained what it is. It's just a slight alteration to the motion given yesterday's budget to add in the words to the 31st of March 2017. After continue.
Is that it?
That's it. Right. Just a few words, if that's acceptable.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'm bringing this important matter to Council following contact made by a small retail business to me as a representative for Wicklow Bay Ward about the abolition of the small retail relief by the government, which ends on the 31st of March 2016. I'm hoping that party politics can be set aside in supporting our hard-pressed retail businesses in our towns and localities that we all rely on. I'm happy the Chancellor must have heard about our motion that's coming today from North Tyneside, and his announcement yesterday proposes from April 2017, 600,000 small firms nationally will not have to pay business rates, and 250,000 will pay lower rates. But as with all these matters, the devil will be in the detail, which we do not have at present. However, we do know that businesses will struggle this coming financial year with no retail support relief. Some 838 businesses in this borough are affected, and it will cost them 1.3 million, which they will have to find in 16-17. This particular Whitley Bay businessman was in a panic as he has 2 small retail premises in Whitley Bay. And these small, often independent retail shops provide a much-needed vitality to the town, and similarly do the same in North Shields, Wallsend and other similar shopping small locations. The measure was introduced for the years 2014-15 and 2015-16 under the Local Government Finance Act 1988 as amended by the Localism Act, and reimbursed local authorities under Section 47 to qualifying ratepayers. It is a discretionary relief that I am pleased to say has been granted and administered in full by this local authority. Properties that benefited from the relief are occupied premises with a rateable value of £50,000 or less, that are wholly or mainly being used as shops, restaurants, cafes and drinking establishments. The Government announced in the autumn statement on the 5th of December 2013 that it would provide a relief of up to £1,000 to all occupied retail premises with a rateable value of £50,000 or less in each of the 2 years, 2014-15 and 15-16. In the autumn statement on the 3rd of December 2014, the Government announced that for 2015-16, the amount of retail relief for all occupied retail premises with a rateable value of £50,000 or less would be increased to £1,500. This later sum of £1,500 is a huge sum to small business, some of which are struggling significantly. Local shops open and close all the time, and this relief has made all the difference to some businesses. We know the retail sector is changing, particularly due to internet shopping, and many high streets are experiencing challenges as they look to adapt the changing consumer preferences in how people shop. The government says in its guidance notes that it wishes to support town centres in their response by providing particular support to retailers. However, the Daily Telegraph on the 25th of November 2015 said, the Chancellor has also quietly axed the retail discount that entitled shop and restaurant owners with a rateable properties worth up to £50,000 to a £1,500 discount. British retailers were facing prolonged misery after the government delayed its highly anticipated overhaul of business rates until this year's, meaning yesterday's, budget. The indication from the budget yesterday is that Mr Osborne wishes this to change. However, Paul Johnson from the Institute of Fiscal Studies said this morning that Mr Osborne was simply shifting figures around and that bigger cuts or tax rises may well be needed as the national debt rises. With this and other scepticism at this last chance saloon game, this is the time to try and influence the government during this interim year and support our local retail businesses to make it through to the other side and to the 1st of April 2017 when the new scheme is proposed.
Can you smoke, please?
I fervently hope it will come in, but economists have today accused George Osborne of ducking tough decisions on deficit reduction in favour of generous giveaways in yesterday's budget. As we move towards the withdrawal of the rate support grant to be replaced by business rate relief to fund this authority and others in 2020, it appears that we will lose several millions in funding each year, and added to this will be the planned 3-year revaluation. We need to put our case as local government will again have to cope with the deepest and most severe cuts. I hope that the opposition can support this action to help our hard-pressed, struggling local retail businesses in this borough to survive this financial year, and I so move this motion. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I believe Gary Madden is seconding this.
Yes, that's right, Chair.
Thank you.
I'd like to offer my support to this motion. As a councillor for Wallsend, which has had a vibrant town centre in the past and is starting to turn the corner now, it is essential that we do what we can to support small retailers. The retail relief was brought in originally to help small retailers offset the effects of internet sales. I'm delighted that the war on internet sales is obviously being won, and small retailers are obviously doing brilliantly now. This has quite obviously happened, or why else would Gideon pull the retail relief from the end of March this year? Retailers are struggling just like the rest of this country. This country has seen our debt rise to 1.5 trillion under the Tories. Didn't George say he would have sorted the debt problem by the end of the last Parliament? Another of his missed targets. Wallsend has struggled to replace the old co-op building with a large retailer. This has now been resolved now that New River have brought in Aldi to Wallsend. They have also rented out 52 of the 54 retail units in the old indoor market. These are exactly the type of retailer that will be hit by the removal of the retail rate relief. Let's hope the Conservatives opposite will vote in favour of this motion. Or will they be prepared to go back to the town centres and say they didn't support a motion to help retailers? After all, you always say you are the party of business. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay. Questions, please. Councillor McMullen.
Yeah, I just want to ask the mover if they believe that us putting forward this motion does show that Labour councillors do not have a dislike of business, as was alleged earlier in this meeting.
I'm certain that we don't have a dislike of business. They are part of our vibrant and sustainable communities, and we value them greatly.
Any more questions? Please, David.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask Councillor Graham 2 questions? Can she tell me the time frame within which this retail rate relief was set?
It was set for this financial year just ending and the year before. the small retail relief.
So it was, from the outset, known that it would be a 2-year scheme. So all businesses in receipt of this relief knew that it was time limited.
They did, but there has been a movement and a promise from the government over many months that they would be looking at business rates to change them, but nothing ever came forward. So the businesses have been left with uncertainty, worry about what was proposed until they heard something yesterday. But the worry after yesterday is that the books don't balance anyway, so will this money be forthcoming? So we need to keep the momentum and keep the pressure up for our small businesses to try and keep them viable and keep the businesses and the shops and the restaurants open.
Any more questions? No? Okay. Anyone wants to speak on the motion, please? Speak on the motion. Councillor Derrick.
Thank you, Chair. If the language in this motion hadn't been, or was not so provocative, I think it may have garnered support on this side of the chamber. We hear from members opposite that we should come together for the benefit of North Tyneside, but they cannot resist making the motions unsupportable by members on this side. For instance, if the last paragraph, the last sentence was taken out, then it may well have, as I say, have achieved unanimous support. But if the shoe was on the other foot, they wouldn't support it if it was supporting an attack on their government.
Right. Councillor Franklin, have you indicated?
Thank you, Chair. As the proposer said, the devil is in the detail, and the sting in the tail is that the reduction that George Osborne proposed yesterday in rate relief will actually hit the council. This rate relief that we're discussing has rightly been targeted at smaller independent retailers who are vital to the retail offer in town centres. The removal of this relief will place a serious financial burden on retailers, and many will have to consider how this affects the viability of their business, with the obvious possible consequences on employment in our town centres. Town centres, well, the town centre in North Shields currently has a vacancy rate of 18%. That's despite considerable efforts by many, including council officers, to improve the situation. And it's difficult to see how the removal of the retail rate relief will not have an adverse impact on the number of vacancies. A vibrant town centre is crucial to many of our residents who rely on either their ability to walk or on public transport to visit the town, and a reduced retail offering in the town will have a disproportionate impact on those residents who are generally the residents who are less well off. Our town centres continue to have to compete with out-of-town centre shopping centres with their many advantages, including free parking, and it's difficult to see how the removal of the rate relief will not be another barrier to retailers in our town centres. In short, the removal of the rate relief will place a serious financial burden on small and, in the main, independent retailers, with a likely negative consequence for employment, and it will have a serious impact on many of our residents. The removal of the rate relief does nothing to help ensure that the retail offer in our towns is vibrant, and it will have an adverse effect on the place, the people and the work. Now, they are not my words. They are the collected views of the members of North Shields Chamber of Trade and Commerce. I met with the chairman a couple of weeks back to discuss this, and this is the response that I've received from them, the traders. What follows is my words. We've had a suggestion that everyone knew this was going to come to an end. It was a temporary rate relief, and in the various measures announced in the budget yesterday, this one-year gap funding could have been announced. It could have been afforded if Butts the chemist paid corporation tax. It could have been afforded if George Osborne hadn't reduced corporation tax. It could have been afforded if he decided not to give a further tax break to the people who are earning in excess of 42 or 43,000. So it could have been afforded we could have seen our businesses continuing with this measure for one more year until they receive the measures that were proposed in yesterday's budget. So I'm very happy to support this motion, and I hope that members of all parties can do so. Thank you.
Nobody else wish to speak? Sorry, Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this motion doesn't give a full picture of the facts. When the retail rate relief was introduced by the coalition government, it was done as a bonus, for a 2-year period only. And whilst I have sympathy with the retailers, the relief is not now being abolished, it is simply coming to its planned end. For a bonus scheme to end as planned can't be described as an attack by government on businesses. The rise in car parking charges locally has really been an attack on businesses. The small business relief continues and was doubled by the coalition government in 2010, so that with a rateable value of less than 6,000, no business rates have been paid, and it's been extended every year, forming part of the annual autumn statement. It's been raised again by the Conservatives, so that 600,000 small businesses will not be paying business rates. The threshold for the higher rate of business rate has also been raised, so that a quarter of a million businesses, small businesses, will be getting a tax cut. Another item is that there will also be lower stamp duty on commercial premises, enabling businesses to move properties more easily to fit in with their business patterns. I think it must be noted also that in future years the local authorities will in time be keeping business rates, and will have greater flexibility in what is charged as regards rates, and then we'll see what happens locally. Thank you.
Councillor Bruce Pickford.
Thank you, Chair. I'm replying on behalf of the Mayor and the Cabinet. And just to say that we share the concerns raised in the motion. And between the end of the retail rate relief that ends on the 31st of March 2016 and the enhanced small business rate relief measures, which won't be introduced until the 1st of April 2017, the Government should have put in place some transitional arrangements. After all, if they recognise there was a problem that required that rate relief in the first place, recognise there's a problem and that's why they're putting in the enhanced version, why leave everybody high and dry for a year? The sensible thing would have been to taper it down until the start of the new scheme, or start the new scheme straight away. In addition, there's a wider concern for local government funding. As has been mentioned, the Government has already announced that policy intent for local areas to retain 100% of the business rates that it collects. At this stage, it is unclear how the small business rate relief will be funded in the longer term. Our initial look suggests that it will cost at approximately £1.9 million a year, which I am told initially will be picked up by the Government. However, I have concerns that if it is the same as the council tax subsidy, then it will disappear into the settlement funding and then be subject to further cuts over the years, thereby further cutting the amount of money available here. That's exactly what's happened this year with the council tax subsidy, and that's what we have right there. Therefore, all of this situation needs clarification. Now, if they want to bring it in, fine, but we need to clarify how we actually do it. And that's why the spirit of the motion was the effect it will have in that year is totally avoidable, and that's why we should write to the Government and ask them to reconsider that year instead of leaving people high and dry, to put the retail rate relief back on for that year.
Thank you. Sandra, you have the right to reply.
Thank you very much, Chair. These stop-go policies, like the tax credits and the fight the Chancellor will possibly have over disability payments, which will be a risk to our people and our overall economy, and helps no one to plan effectively to run a thriving business and help regenerate our small towns and shopping places which are suffering badly. These additional costs are sometimes passed on to the consumer, although wanting to support the local businesses and the small businesses may be forced through higher costs and themselves being hard-pressed or hard up to shop elsewhere. For our town centres to be vibrant and sustainable, we need to support them, and we need real people, and we need solid communities. We need this one-year breathing space, and I would have hoped the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party would be able to support business in our town centres. I don't understand Councillor Lilly's objection to the last paragraph, but that's for him. And I hope that everyone can support this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I will go to the vote then. All those in favour of the motion? Okay. All those against? 42 in favour, none against. Thank you. Thank you everybody for that debate. The next motion is motion 3. This is the European Union debate, and it's been moved by Councillor Peter Early.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to move this motion in order to highlight just how essential continued membership of the EU is for the residents of North Tyneside. To date, the debate on EU membership has been characterised by both sides quoting a lot of statistics in support of their viewpoint. I never want to break with tradition. The good news is that I will also be quoting a lot of statistics. However, I think the important thing to remember is that behind these statistics are the very real benefits which continued EU membership brings for every man, woman and child in North Tyneside. Real investment in economic growth, real jobs and protection in the workplace and for consumers, real environmental protection, peace and security. A lot has been said about the cost to Britain of its EU membership. However, in purely financial terms, the North East is a net beneficiary of EU funding. Between 2007 and 2013, the North East benefited from over £4 million of EU funding. Over the next 5 years, continued membership will mean the North East will receive a further £644 million in funding. In North Tyneside, EU money has contributed £2 million to the regeneration of North Shields Fish Quay, £9 million to the redevelopment of the Oswan Hunter site, and EU money is also being used to support the business factory, which helps start-up businesses in the borough. The North East benefits more than any other English region from EU funding. This support is ever more vital as central government funding for the borough is reduced year on year. The North East region is also a net exporter into the EU single market. Over half our region's exports go to Europe, worth almost £7 billion each year. EU membership contributes to the economic growth of the region and helps to attract foreign companies and investment into the North East, which use the region as a gateway to the European single market. The EU makes a major contribution to North Eastern universities, where many North Tyneside residents either work or study, helping to develop the North East as a centre of excellence for science, innovation and research, which in turn benefits the local economy. With this investment and growth comes employment. In the North East alone, it has been calculated that 140,000 jobs are linked to our trade with the EU. Whilst nobody is suggesting these jobs would disappear overnight were Britain to vote to leave, there is a very real possibility that when confronted with the prospect of tariffs to continue to sell their goods within the European single market, decisions might be taken by multinational corporations to gradually move their businesses back within the EU zone. This is not Project Fear or scaremongering. It is simple economic common sense. Why would multinational corporations continue to base themselves in a country which would deny them easy access to one of the largest marketplaces in the world with 500 million consumers? Firms such as Hitachi and Nissan have made it clear that they wish to see the UK remaining in the EU. Nissan's chair and CEO, Carlos Ghosn, said recently, "Our preference as a business is of course that the UK stays within Europe. It makes the most sense for jobs, trade and costs. For us, a position of stability is more positive than a collection of unknowns." EU membership also brings with it many rights and protections for North Tyneside residents. Protections in the workplace, including maternity and paternity rights, holiday and holiday pay entitlements, and equal rights for agency workers. European legislation guarantees consumers fair treatment, products which meet acceptable standards, and a right of redress if something goes wrong. These are not the red tape and bureaucracy of which Eurosceptics talk, but very real rights and protections. The EU leads on tackling climate change and has brought forward legislation which helps to care for our environment. As the motion says, environmental issues don't stop at borders, and only by working together can we protect our environment. And in the North East, we've seen this in better air quality and improved beaches. In 1957, the Times published an infamous headline which read, "Heavy fog in Channel, continent cut off." I hope that in the following decades of EU membership, which have been and continue to be so beneficial for the UK, the North East and especially the people of North Tyneside, that this fog is lifted and that the UK will vote to remain within the EU and that members will join me in supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Moran, you second the motion?
Second the motion and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Questions on the motion, please? Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. Can the mover confirm that no public money will be spent by the Council on supporting the UK's continued membership of the European Union?
As far as I'm aware, the Council is not going to expend funds in that way. I think it's for individual councillors to express their preferences on the doorstep and in the debate generally.
Thank you. Would the mover have liked to see the UK government step in to aid the steel industry last year when it hit financial difficulties to prevent closures?
I would have liked to see the UK government do that, and I don't believe, as is inferred in the question, that anything in the EU regulations would have prevented them from doing so, as other countries whose steel industries have suffered decline have been able to do that, and they are existing members of the EU.
Does he not appreciate that the EU rules against state aid prevented the UK government so doing?
As I've said, I don't believe that they did, as other countries in a similar position who are EU members have acted to support their steel industries.
Should the dredging of rivers, especially, for example, in York and Cumbria, to prevent flooding be permitted?
If that is what is advised as the best way to avert future flooding in the regions, then yes. I don't think that's particularly the point that's salient to the EU. I think it's a point about what is the best way to act to avert flooding. And I do think that the Conservative government could have taken much swifter action in applying for the EU relief that was available to those who had suffered from flooding.
Can you just take to the motion, which is...
Yes, I can. Does the mover not realise that the European Union directive prevents the dredging of rivers in the way which we used to, and that since that directive came into force, rivers have flooded?
I think that the governments can still, within the bounds of EU regulations, take necessary action to bring forward measures to avoid future flooding, and that's very much what I would like to see this government do.
Fortunately, the government's not so allowed, Chairman. Chairman, the Chancellor has already reduced VAT on female sanitary products to 5%, which is often described as the tampon tax. Many women's groups campaign for the tax to be scrapped entirely. Does the mover support that campaign?
I'm not sure I have sufficient experience of the products at hand.
Just say yes. It's surely a campaign upon which he can express a view, the campaign to remove the tax.
He doesn't have to, he doesn't want to.
Does the mover therefore not know that the tax cannot be reduced without the agreement of the European Union Commission and all 27 other member states?
I think there are many areas where cooperation across Europe by all members is a beneficial thing, not just for other countries within the European Union, but also for Britain. I think the fundamental point on all this is that in acting together, we can do so for the benefit not just of British residents, but peoples across the European Union.
Is it not ludicrous that such a campaign, with public support in the UK, cannot bear fruit in the UK because the Chancellor is prevented?
The tampon tax?
Yes, indeed. The Chancellor is prevented from removing the tax regardless of public wish. Thank you. I see he's conceded the point.
So,
in which case, another question. Does the mover think that our taxes should be decided by those whom we elect democratically?
I would say that the vast majority of EU representatives are directly elected. I guess that what she's talking about is the European Commission, but those are appointed by European commissioners are appointed by member states at the behest of individual countries' parliaments. So in that respect, I think there is a democratic path to creating legislation in the EU.
Does the mover remember when North Shields was a thriving fishing port with associated onshore fishing industries and related businesses which were thriving?
Do I remember? I do remember. I may have been a very small child, but I do remember, yeah.
Is the mover therefore happy that the British fishing industry was decimated when we lost our 200 miles of inshore water zone to the European Union and suffered overfishing from EU fleets, Chairman?
Yeah, well, obviously got the drift, Councillor Willis, that you're obviously against the EU. Have you... we'll work that one out. Have you got any more questions? I don't want to go on, like...
I'll just have one more.
Because you can have a speech, so you can do your speech.
Is the mover... Well, I'm restricted to time, aren't I? And I
Well,
can speak for quite a long time on this. One last one then, Chairman. Is the mover happy that 500 million people who live within the European Union could come here if they so wished and we could do absolutely nothing to stop it?
It's a question. It's a question. Do you wish to answer that?
Chair, I think the Council needs to be aware that 2 million British citizens live in other EU countries. That they rely and draw on the infrastructure and benefits in those countries. EU migrants are beneficial for the UK on the whole. For every £1 they claim in benefits, they produce £1.34 in contributions to taxation. There's a net benefit. They fill important gaps in the labour market, especially in the health service. They contribute to the cultural diversity of the country, and I think in all those ways EU migration is positive. And I don't think that simply putting up the drawbridge, as some Brexiteers suggest, is a solution to that. I think it would be detrimental for the economy overall of the UK.
Thank you. Councillor Macmillan, Anthony?
It's okay, I don't need to ask a question.
Councillor Carl Johnson?
Thanks, Chair. Would the mover agree with me that a big benefit of the EU is the ability for it to be flexible and that David Cameron has just secured? Chair, there's too many microphones on, we've got a feedback now. So. That David Cameron secured, other EU countries are getting rid of the 0% levy, allowed us to get rid of the tampon tax.
Yes, Chair, I do agree with that.
Thanks, Chair. I have another question, if I may.
Councillor Lott? Oh, sorry, you got another question?
I'm finished, Chair.
Councillor Lott, go on. Councillor Lott? Oh, you got one?
Yeah.
All right.
Does the mover agree that any likely trade deal outside the European Union would require free movement of people, such as the deal that Norway and Switzerland have?
Yes, Chair, I'm aware that countries within the European Economic Area, such as Norway, in order to trade with the EU and gain access to the single market, do in fact have to accept the free movement of peoples, and that in purely terms of pure numbers, Norway actually has a higher rate of EU migration than the UK.
Would the mover agree that it is not the EU but the British government which are blocking action on steel, as the EU action plan helps Europe's struggling steel industry, which was a levy on Chinese steel coming into was blocked by the British government?
I do agree with that, and I think, as I said, answered the earlier question, I think there is much that the British government could have done in relation to the failure of the steel industry, and other countries within the EU were able, despite the claimed restrictions on their ability to do so, to make those take those actions and support their industries.
Councillor Franklin.
Thank you, Chair. Would the mover agree that North Shields Fish Quay and its environs have benefited significantly from grants from the European Union? And secondly, would the mover agree that there was a report published last year on the benefits to this country of immigration and it was suppressed by the government?
In relation to the first question, as I say, the North Shields Fish Quay has had £2 million to help with regeneration. I work in the area of North Shields Fish Quay, and I've seen it develop and grow over the last few years, and I think it's been a very positive move. I'm not aware of the report that the Councillor refers to, but I do think that the government could do more to promote the fact that EU migration is beneficial to the UK, instead of always presenting it in a fairly negative light.
Okay, any more questions? Do you want to speak? Right, okay, let's go to the speeches. Yeah, who wants to come in first? And right, Councillor Hodson.
Thanks, Chairman. I have for many years supported Tony Benn's views on the European Union, and he opposed the Union for its lack of democracy. For 1,000 years, England has honed and fine-tuned the difficult business of social organisation, where groups with differing views and agendas can peacefully live together around nationhood with a proper pride in national achievement, empowered by citizen authority by elections and votes. EU decisions are made behind closed doors, usually in the midst of a crisis, without any elected representative participation. In the early days of the European Community, President de Gaulle of France opposed the UK's entry on the grounds that our system of government was essentially different to that of much younger countries of Europe. Eventually, however, we did join, and there has been disquiet with that decision ever since, within both major political parties. We have a heart-to-hearted relationship with the European Union, notably refusing to join its currency and its border arrangements. As to the claims of the emotion, it creates jobs and wealth. The community does not generate jobs, just the opposite. Unemployment in parts of Europe is devastatingly high, particularly youth unemployment, and several countries are technically bankrupt, notably France and Italy, both founder members of the Union. Yes, the Union does invest in the North East, but that would have taken place without our membership. The investment we get from the Union is our own money, less an amount used to invest in other member states. Had we not been members of the Union, we would have had more money to invest in the North East and elsewhere. The protection of rights is a moving feast. Social development takes place worldwide, and these are available for adoption in the UK if that is decided by the government and supported by the electorate with their democratic votes. Our national security is provided by our armed forces and our alliances, notably NATO. The 28 states of Europe have great difficulty in agreeing anything, let alone defence. Improvements to the environment. The UK's adoption of environment protection measures does not in any way rely on Europe. I recall John Prescott, in the name of the UK, leading the way on environment protection at the Kyoto conference nearly 20 years ago. The UK has always led on environment protection issues, and there is every reason to expect this would continue were we outside the EU. Chairman, my view is that the people of the UK will remove a millstone from their necks by leaving the European Union and will take a giant step forward, reinvigorating their historic worldwide trading interests and relationships, utilising our inventiveness and craft skills. I oppose the motion. The interests of the people of North Tyneside and in the UK generally will be best served by leaving the Union. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, talking about creating jobs and growth, only about a third of total UK exports go to the EU. For every 10 cars we sell to Europe, they sell us 13. Business is business. If anyone thinks that because we come out of Europe, that business people in Europe are just going to cut off their nose to spite their face, not do business with us, needs to really have a good think. As for figures, the member opposite said that we send more than a third of exports to Europe. Europe does fiddle, or rather twist the figures occasionally. Sometimes businesses here have to sell items to worldwide companies, maybe Brazil, places like that. But occasionally they have to send them across to Amsterdam and Rotterdam, and then across to Brazil. The EU takes this down as an export to Europe. It's not. That's one of the reasons why the member opposite and myself have different figures on that. The EU invests in major projects across the North East with billions of pounds of investment. Well, if we didn't send £350 million every week, and I'm going to repeat that because these figures get bandied about all the time, these millions and billions, but if you stop to think about it, £350 million every week, not every month, not every year, every week, to Brussels. We could continue to invest in the North East ourselves, supporting science and technical innovation. And much closer to home, spend our money on our pavements and roads, rather than a cycle route in Tynemouth that the majority of residents didn't want and is called by residents now the cycle road to nowhere. Well, if you go canvassing on the doorsteps, you'll get that all the time. Regarding the environment, beaches and air quality improved because of Europe? Why? These are all things we are capable of doing ourselves as a nation. Again, if we stop sending the enormous amounts of money to Brussels. I have more faith in the British people making these and many other decisions, obviously, than the Labour Party obviously has. I won't be supporting the motion.
That's fine. I'll let you come on. Councillor Lott?
A short contribution you'll be pleased to hear, Chair. It's very interesting to see the almost vehement disagreement that the Conservatives opposite have with their Prime Minister and their Chancellor of the Exchequer. But I can give you three very, very good reasons to support this motion. George Galloway, Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage. If they're in favour of leaving, I'm staying.
Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. The UK and the North East is a part of that, is a trading nation, and we should really be looking worldwide rather than narrowly inward at the European Union. As a country, we should be free to make our own trade deals rather than depending on the European Union Trade Commissioner to make them for us, to represent us alongside 27 other countries with very different interests. The current Trade Commissioner, by the way, is a Swedish social sciences teacher turned professional politician. We need and deserve better representation. The European Union is a declining area with more unemployment, far more unemployment than here, and economically on the decline. Other areas are growing much faster, and our prosperity in the North East depends on our ability to trade with growing areas such as India. India, as part of the Commonwealth, has historic links with us, and yet we can't make our own trade treaties with that country. The EU hasn't got round to one. Mexico has, the EU hasn't. That's a real handicap for Britain. And there are plenty of other countries in the same situation. The billions of so-called investment my colleagues have touched on, it's crazy that we are funding roads and bridges in Croatia, in Portugal, in Brussels and all over the place, rather than projects here. The EU is even using our money to fund youth work in South America and firms in Switzerland who don't even belong to the European Union. If we weren't making the contributions, we could make the grants ourselves, we could do all the support that we do at the moment, including the farmers, and still have lots of money left over. And we wouldn't need the complicated EU consent before we embarked on those projects. With regard to protection of rights, they could and should be done by our own Parliament. We've got a very good record on such matters from the slave trade, abolition and the Factories Acts onwards. Keeping us safe is a really important issue. It certainly isn't dependent on the European Union at all. Richard Walton, the former head of counter-terrorism at Command at Scotland Yard, who served in that post until last year, says that cooperation with countries in and out of the European Union would still go on because it's not dependent on the European Union. And indeed, terrorism is a higher threat whilst we're in the European Union. The movement of people means that we can't stop 500 million people coming here. We see the stream of migrants from across the world who once granted residence in an EU country could come here. Can we be sure that none are terrorists? There are already concerns that ISIL-trained terrorists are in the EU and could be here. Look at the attacks in Paris and Brussels. Do we really feel safe because of our EU membership? We've lost control of who comes to our country and on what terms. Colonel Richard Kemp, the former head of government anti-terrorism, says, "While we remain in the European Union, terrorists have the right to come freely into our country. None of this was envisaged when we joined. By leaving, we will again be able to determine who does and does not enter. Failure to do so increases the terrorist threat." It's NATO that keeps us safe. We have good armed forces and are the 4th largest military power on the planet. The most significant issue, Chairman, though, ignored by the movers, is that of sovereignty, that of democracy. In other words, the ability to be governed by those whom we elect and whom we can get rid of at the ballot box. Too many laws and regulations are made by the European Union. It's said that we have influence there, but on 72 occasions we have opposed measures in the European Council, and on 72 occasions we have been defeated. Some influence. The Prime Minister was right to try and renegotiate our arrangements with the European Union. Labour didn't even want to try. Gordon Brown didn't give us a vote on the Lisbon Treaty. However, the European Union has shown a complete unwillingness to reform, as in previous years. I believe it's time to take back control of our own country, regain our democracy. As the 5th largest economy in the world, we are well capable of running our own affairs. We should control our own borders, make our own laws, control our agriculture, our fishing, our welfare benefits and our taxes, and spend our own cash on services as decided by those whom we elect. I was interested to hear earlier this evening during the discussion on the devolution agreement, Chairman, that the elected mayor said that we should make our decisions here and not be dictated to by Whitehall. It's even more important that we should make our decisions in Britain and not be dictated to by Brussels, by people whom we don't elect and can't get rid of. I cannot support this motion. I have faith in our country.
Thank you. 5 minutes, sir. Thank you. Councillor Bruce Pickard.
Thank you. You know, to hear the people who are opposing it, you'd think that it was some sort of minority party that's actually saying that we should stay in Europe. But it's actually the leaders of all the main parties and most of the minor parties, with the exception of UKIP, who are saying that we have benefits and it's to our benefit to stay within Europe. To sort of say that it's going to stop bringing terrorists in. Terrorists come in irrespective of what the law is. That's down to your security services in cooperation. But to me, it's more than that. See, I was lucky or unlucky enough to be around the first time that the vote was taken, and I voted to go into the EU. You have to remember the background at that time. At that time, my granddad had fought in the First World War, which was 2 European countries fighting together. My dad had then fought in the Second World War, which was 2 European countries fighting together. Now, I know we had NATO, but that came about because of trying to get together against the Russian threat, as opposed to what happened in Europe. Us coming together across Europe isn't just about commerce, isn't just about trade, it's also about a social cohesion between the European movements and the countries within Europe. Where is the logic that somebody who's a member of a football club, say, says, I'm going to leave the club, but I'm not going to pay you any subs, but I'm still going to come in for cheap beer on a Saturday, I'm still going to use the showers, and I'm still going to play on the pitch, and by the way, you're going to give me more money back, because that's what is going to happen. Where on earth does the logic come that says we're going to leave and we're going to get a better deal if we leave? Where's the logic in that? It's absolutely ridiculous, because what's shown is any deal that is there at the moment has actually been to the detriment of the country, because they still have to conform when selling goods in those areas to the requirements there. And as one businessman said, what's wrong with ensuring that when I sell something to Europe, the plastic that I made it with is safe for children? What's wrong with that? Which is the legislation that people keep complaining about we want to do, but never say which ones we want to get rid of? Because what they want rid of is all the social legislation. They want unfettered demand to the market for commerce without realising any social responsibility whatsoever. These people don't act in a vacuum. They act within an area where we need social cohesion, and there has to be a payoff between what goods you can sell in and standards that are available to actually do that. And finally, if I can finish up on the dredging, because it's funny. We're actually just not stopping us dredging the Tyne, because we're actually doing it down the road there. What it did stop us doing was taking that contaminated waste into the middle of the North Sea and dumping it in the middle of the fishing grounds. Europe ensured we had proper safety environmental standards, and it might have cost us money, but in the long term, it's the best thing for the people and the environment of the North East. That type of thing, we do not want to go back to the 1820s, to the Factories Act, when pollution was everywhere. There is nothing wrong with having proper legislation, with working together, cooperating together, because that's the way we move forward, not by being little Englanders.
Marion Hushcroft.
Thank you, Chair. Like Councillor Pickard, I can't accept what Councillor Wallace says about terrorists. Terrorists don't respect boundaries. The decision as to whether we stay in Europe or not isn't a decision for us as a council to make. It is for the people of our country to make in a referendum. I personally believe that it is right to have this referendum, as many people were either not born or too young to vote in the last one. And I've had quite a lot of young people telling me that they're pleased that they have this opportunity. And a no vote won't be as simple as those supporting leaving say. We've all seen the difficulties David Cameron has had in renegotiating to stay in. Norway trades with Europe, but pays a large amount of money to do so, has to accept the terms and conditions of the EU, but doesn't have a vote or a say in what those terms and conditions are. Canada has been negotiating a trade agreement for the past 7 years. Our economy would suffer considerably if we had to spend months or years negotiating a new trade deal. When I go on holiday, I frequently see signs of European funding wherever I go. But you don't get quite as much in this country, and I can't help wondering if that is because we simply keep bickering about whether we should be in or out of Europe instead of getting on with the job and making this work for us. Councillor Pickard's analogy about the club is a good one, because if you're part of it, you can work to try and get a change. If you're not part of it, you have very, very little chance. I personally support remaining part of Europe because I think there's some negatives. I'm not going to say everything is a positive, but I agree to most of the bullet points in this motion, and I think Europe generally is a good thing for our country. I hope if the nation votes yes, then everyone will accept it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I support the motion, but I don't want to go over all the positive things because they've been said time and time again, and I agree with everything on the positive side. A few things I would like to point out, though. Since when did somebody come into the country with terrorists typed across their bow? How do you know who is going to be a terrorist? You cannot predict that at all. Secondly, I would just make it very, very clear, because Councillor McIntyre referred to the cycle path. The cycle path has to be there because many, many people in the borough have asked for a cycle path. More importantly, many, many young people came to... Oh, yes, they have, Councillor McIntyre. Many, many young people came to see me in my surgery before I was even the mayor about what we're doing in North Tyneside about cycle. When this was started, a number of young people who go to schools along that area, particularly Southlands and Morden, came to me and said, when are you going to start this cycle path? And I'm sure Councillor Lilly knows there's many, many young people really happy at the cycle path there, because I've been told about what was put on there. What was it, this Facebook thing that people do? Yes, yeah. So I just want to say the only people who are unhappy about that cycle path are the people who live in that street. It's a bit like, you want to build a house, right? You're going to build some house on a field. Somebody who's just quite recently bought a house on a field, quite happy, but then we say you're going to build some more houses on that field, doesn't want them there now. There's something about understanding what the people of this borough want, not about what makes everybody happy because they live there. This is about the needs of the borough. And I think the European deal we have actually brings a great deal to the North Tyneside. And I have to tell you, if you talk to the businesses at this present moment in North Tyneside, they were really worried at this point that we may go out of the European. And that's the people we should be supporting anyway. I don't want to add anything more. I think you've got the gist. Thank you very much.
I think you support the motion.
Yeah.
We could maybe call the cycle path the Champs-Élysées or something in a European sort of...
Can I just make a point, Chair, about the cycle path?
No, it's about Europe.
Sorry.
You can do it in your mayor's.
Oh, I can, yes.
Yes, of course you can. Of course you can. Right. Let's go for the vote on this. All those in favour of the motion, please show. You got your fingers ready? Oh, sorry, I didn't give that reply. Sorry. It's a bit the same, like, but go on.
Yeah, I may have had a premonition that this motion is going to be carried. I don't know where it came from. But just to answer some of the points that have been made, to say that the European Union does not generate jobs for the North East, I think, is to take a massive gamble on what may happen if we vote to leave. And as the Mayor's just said, most businesses within the North East favour remaining in the EU. Most members of the CBI favour remaining in the EU. Most financial firms in the City of London favour remaining in the EU. Although the Chamber of Commerce nationally hasn't taken a view on it, a survey of their members shows that most of their members favour remaining in the EU. So they obviously believe that it does generate economic growth and jobs. To say, in answer to the point that it's not the EU that secures our peace, I think I would simply say that I think the experience of EU membership has proven that those countries that buy and sell to each other don't tend to shoot at each other, and that's what's taken place in the years prior, in the first half of the 20th century. I've already said that the North East is a net beneficiary from EU funding, and it's okay to say that if we left the EU, that would result in us being able to invest in the North East. I don't have any faith that the current government would do that, because everything we've seen about investment in the region from the current government tends to demonstrate exactly the opposite. Ditto on the protection of workers' rights. The recent trade union bill that the government's attempted to pass is an effort to weaken workers' rights and rights in the workplace. So to say that leaving the EU would not weaken the protection that workers have, I think again is proven wrong by the actions of the current government. On the point about migrants, the right to seek asylum is not related to the EU. It arises from the Geneva Convention. At the moment, the UK has the right to deport any asylum seeker who has not claimed asylum in the first EU country they entered. If we were to leave the EU, that right would disappear. On the point about it being anti-democratic and that the EU makes all our laws for us and that we don't have any say, a recent study of the legislation passed in the House of Commons Library suggests that about approximately 12% of UK legislation originates from within the EU. So the vast majority of our laws are still made by the British Parliament. And I think the thing that nobody on the other side of the argument has really addressed tonight is what the position would be for the UK if we were to leave Europe. There would be a period of massive uncertainty. It would affect business, it would affect commerce, it would affect the value of our currency. It would very likely lead to higher unemployment in the long term, higher prices for consumer goods because of tariffs that would be placed on them in order to trade outside the EU, unless we were to accept EU regulations as Norway has done. So for all those reasons, I think the EU provides certainty, it provides jobs, it provides stability, and it provides economic growth for our country. If we were to leave, we would be hurling ourselves into an uncertain future, and none of those things would continue to be guaranteed. Thank you.
Good job, I give you the right reply. Yeah? Right, all those in favour? So I think it'll be against? We got one arm. 40 in favour and 4 against. Well done, Peter. For moving that, and that motion is carried. So the next item we've got is item 9, which is the common seal. So we can do the common seal. Thank you. Item 10 is my announcements. I'll be brief. I'd just like to thank everybody, all the councillors in the chamber over the last year, the elected mayor, the chief executive and the officers for their support while doing this role in the council. And also for all those seeking re-election. I know tonight that one councillor is not seeking re-election, who won't be here after May the 19th, whatever happens, and that's Councillor Shirley Mortimer. And I'll just, for those councillors who don't know, as a bit like myself really, I've only known Shirley for 4 years, but Shirley has served the residents of North Tyneside for almost 37 years, I believe, since being elected to the post in May 1975. Shirley had a 4-year period between 1995 and 1999 when she wasn't a councillor, but she returned to her seat in colour coat and has continued her service until she stands down from the post following May's election. I'm sure everyone present, regardless of politics, would like to join me in thanking Shirley for her dedication. You've been a constant in the council chamber, and I have to say, it would be strange not having you here. Also, on a personal note, because I wrote this as well, but since we were planning on when I came into the chamber in 2012, I went straight into planning, and you always had a load of ways and all that, and me and you stuck up for the trees in this borough. to the annoyance of Carl Johnston and others. So that was appreciated, the flora and fauna. So I'd like to wish you the best, all the best for a healthy and happy future outside the council. And you can say something in a moment, but I won't get that. I'll bring it to you. I've got a small token of a gift for you. When I'm doing this, you can give Shirley a clap.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for letting me say a few words tonight. It is 41 years since I started work as a councillor. If you take the 4 years I was out of council during 95 and 99, I have been a councillor for 37 years, and I would have loved to have continued working in my ward in order to make that a straight 40 years. However, that is not to be. And that is why I welcome this opportunity to say a few words. People I have loved and believed in have betrayed me. The same happened to Joan Bell. However, I have forgiven them because that is what we have to do. Those of you who believe as I do will understand what I mean. However, I'm a great believer in what goes around comes around. So I leave that in God's hands. That out of the way, I would like to thank all the staff in members' services who have worked with me and helped me over the years. I've always had a good rapport with all the officers and I've worked with or had any queries with. And I appreciated and was grateful for the advice and support they always gave me. My thanks go to all of them. Most importantly, I wish to thank all the staunch Conservative people of colour coats who have voted for me over the years. I would also like to thank the Labour and Liberal people who I also know have voted for me in the past. I've been very grateful for their support. I greatly appreciate the help and friendship I've always received from my fellow councillor Ken Barry. Thank you very much, Ken. I love the work also as a member of the Tyne and Wear Fire Authority. We have so many brave firefighters who, with their officers, look after all of us and keep us all safe. Their work with advice to residents and during visits to schools has to be mentioned because it is so valuable for everyone. My 2 years as Deputy Chairman and Chairman of the Council I will never forget. You meet hundreds of wonderful people who are the salt of the earth. Having lunch with the Queen and Prince Philip was the icing on the cake for me. I was pleased when one of our councillors became MP for Wallsend and wished Mary Glindon all the best of luck. Twitter reported that I was standing down as a councillor. No way. Not whilst I'm still able to assist and help the people of colour coats. I would have liked to get to know some of the new members here on the other side, but then you never know what might happen in the future. When I was 10 years old, my then form teacher said goodbye and good wishes when I went to my new school. She wrote the following Shakespeare saying in my autograph book, and I have lived by it ever since then. This, above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man. My very best wishes to all of you and everyone connected with the Council. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for that, and you can follow that, Norma. So you're on.
I just want to say a few words to Shirley, because I actually live in your ward, Shirley. Oh, you never know, yeah. But I just want to say, I know many people in our ward, and they really are very upset that you're going. They think that you did stand down, but I've made sure that they know that you didn't stand down. And I have to tell you, they're very, very grateful for all the work you've done in colour codes. And I haven't heard anyone say a nasty word against you. And I wish you luck for the future. But the truth will out. It always does, Shirley.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I just want to say also thank you to the Chair for keeping me in my place on a number of occasions. But it's much appreciated. I think you've done a grand job. Thank you very, very much. I want to say thank you to my colleagues on this side of the chamber, because in this 3 years we have achieved a great deal in North Tyneside, and it is because of the hard work of you people out there. We now have 49 seats in North Tyneside, the highest ever, and it's because all your hard work that goes on in North Tyneside. I want to also say thank you to our Chief Executive and the officers up there, because when you look what's happened in the 3 years, we might have the ideas, but it's just to this lot to make it happen. Thank you very much indeed, much appreciated. And at the end of all that, I know this is the last meeting, and you'll be out on the... I know it's in your head. And I know it's our last meeting, and it's the last time we'll have Jeanette Pickard with us, Councillor Pickard. So wish you well, and I know you'll all keep an eye on us anyway, Jeanette, and keep us on the right track. But thanks for everything. And I just want to say too, we've had a great year, regardless of everything else. But we're out on the trail again, and we'll be knocking on doors just like everyone else. And I think we'll have a great story to tell. Thank you very much indeed. Oh, the cycle path, yes. Oh, yes, the cycle path. Oh, sorry, Shirley. I do apologise. But there was a great hoo-ha when the cycle path was decided to go ahead. And I got a nice email from one of those gentlemen that lives in the house on that street, and he said, "You do this, madam, at your peril."
Sorry about Jeanette, I didn't know that you were going, so my best wishes go to you as well. That's obviously the chief whip's probably our fault. Who's that? Oh, it's you, guys. Right, there's only 4 questions because question 5 was withdrawn. So question 1 is Councillor Alan Percy. Do you want your question to have taken or taken as read? Answer or taken as read? Thank you very much. Councillor Stirling, you're responding.
Yeah. Our partnership with Warm Zones continues to deliver very positive outcomes for our residents. Since the new contract started in September 2013, Warm Zone has installed over 800 energy-efficient measures in homes across the borough. This has included installing new central heating systems in some homes, which have resulted in 360,000 worth of savings each year on our residents' fuel bills. The total capital investment for these works equates to over £1.5 million. Of this, the Council has only needed to contribute £280,000, which I am sure the Council will agree is an excellent return on our investment. Importantly, Warm Zone also offers free benefit entitlement advice and has secured over £1 million of additional benefits for our most vulnerable residents. I'm sure you will agree we are doing an awful lot to help residents stay warm this winter.
Have you got a supplementary, please?
Yeah. I haven't got
No,
it. I have to read
you've got a
it once.
supplementary. You got a question? No, that's fine. You haven't got one, doesn't matter.
Question 2 is Councillor Brian Burgess. Do you want to receive the question?
Take it as read, Chair.
I'm pleased to inform the Council that we've installed low-energy LED lighting in 7 public buildings this year. This project will generate over £100,000 savings in electricity charges every year. Quadrant East will save £47,000, Parks Leisure will save £11,000, Lakeside Leisure will save £10,000, Tynemouth Pool will save £10,000, the White Swan Centre will save £8,000, Hadrian Leisure will save £6,000, Waves will save £6,000. This will equate to a saving over 500 tonnes of carbon emissions. Thank you.
Councillor Burgess, do you have a supplementary?
I don't have it.
Thank you. Question 3. Councillor Maltman is not here, she's not present. So
just take it as read.
Take it as read.
Well, I'm saying thank you for the question, but she's not here. Anyway, thank you for the question. I'm pleased to be able to inform the Council that we are fully prepared for adverse weather conditions that may arise. The short-term 6 to 10-day forecast is that high pressure is expected to dominate through the period, bringing largely dry conditions. Where it should be milder, it has recently been there is still a risk of sub-zero nights. However, I am pleased to report that we are well prepared should such a temperature drop so low. Council will know we receive 3 weather forecasts daily throughout the winter period and plan our responses accordingly. In relation to our road gritting service, we currently have 28 drivers on standby rota and a fleet of 12 gritting vehicles ready to treat the 240 miles of priority road networks across the borough. We also have 3,000 tonnes of salt in stock, which is more than enough to see us through the rest of the winter. I hope this provides some reassurance that we are prepared and we can for any cold spell. It's just lovely when we get some nice warm weather. You know, I prefer. What?
Thanks. Are you finished?
Sorry, Bruce. It's absolutely
Thank
brilliant.
you. Thank you, Councillor Sterling, for that. Question 4, Councillor John O'Shea. Thank you. Councillor Pickard. Bruce.
Yeah, I'm Ray again. In its budget proposals for 2015-16, Cabinet agreed to make £200,000 of capital funds available for local infrastructure projects, recognising that sometimes small issues have a significant local impact and would not always be picked up by the overall asset management of our highways and open spaces. The scheme has proven popular with members and residents, and 19 schemes were identified by members and are being delivered in 2015-16. Therefore, the funding was continued into 2016-17, and so far 16 projects have been identified. The fence works on Monkseaton Drive were proposed and are being sponsored by the St Mary's Ward members as part of the 15-16 community infrastructure projects. Officers understand from the ward members is that there is a long-standing issue which has been raised by residents over a number of years who reside in the Chesters and Clifton Grove estates in respect to school children who migrate through the estate and the tree copse to and from Whitley Bay High. The fence was intended to control the movement of children to the formal crossing points and also offer a further reduction from the traffic noise on Monkseaton Drive. The works commenced and were initially suspended following a number of concerns raised by residents in respect of both the line and type of fence being erected. Officers agreed with members to suspend the works pending further consultation. Officers then met with members and agreed not to undertake any further works until members had had the opportunity to consult further with the residents directly affected, namely in the Chesters and Clifton Grove. Notwithstanding further consultation, Officers have proposed an alternative fencing solution which will hopefully address the main issues raised by both the immediate residents and the wider community. The ward members have confirmed their support for this proposal, and officers are waiting to confirm the final details with the contractor and will then undertake the work. The new proposal is for a fine mesh fence to run along the tree line along Seaton Drive of the copse. The original project budget was £10,000, and notwithstanding initial fencing costs incurred by the contract, it is expected that the project will still be delivered in line with the original allocated budget.
Thank you for that answer. Councillor Shea, have you got a supplementary?
I'll ask one separately, Chairman. Yeah, that's okay. No, not at the moment, thank you.
Well, that's it.
No.
Point of information, Chairman, the fence was initially put in the wrong place. It was not on the line which was envisaged by us.
I'll do the question, but thank you for that.
It was in the wrong.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. Well, that's it. That's the questions done. I've got a supplementary. That's good night, Vienna. Bye-bye.
I think we'll probably go next door first. I'm not sure.
We'll do these again.
We haven't said. Just hang on a minute, you know.
He was right.